Dominic Perrottet, my premier, announced that our vaccine rate is going to be at 80% by tomorrow or today. And he went ahead and said that we were going to open our borders. But the problem was international borders are under federal jurisdiction, and he is a state premier. So what happened here? The PM, so ScoMo, who follows me on Twitter, was blindsided by a detail in New South Wales border reopening announcement. Scott Morrison has delivered a slapdown for the New South Wales Premier after the PM was blindsided by a major detail of his plan to reopen international borders. Now, someone just wrote an article and it did a little piece. It was actually Reuters. Now, Reuters has 23.9 million followers, and they put out this video. Oh, yeah, people coming back and hugging and stuff. And it says the Australian city of Sydney will allow the entry of fully vaccinated travellers from overseas from November 1 without the need for quarantine. Authorities said, well, that's what my premier said. But the Prime Minister had to walk that back and say, well, technically, no. It's going to be only Australians who are overseas, who are still overseas from being, what do you call it, COVID trapped overseas or something like that. So technically, no, travellers aren't allowed back. Dominic Perrottet's unilateral decision to scrap hotel and home quarantine for vaccinated international tourists has sparked fears it could lead to longer state border closures. Because if we have a bunch of overseas travellers come back and then they start driving up interstate, well, we're going to have a few issues. So while November 1 was the date both the PM and New South Wales Premier were working towards to open international borders, the decision to throw open the borders to international tourists shocked the Morrison government. Oh, it shocked the Morrison government. But hang on, we've got Reuters with 24 million followers on Twitter, whether you want to call it fake news or not, or just piss poor reporting and fact checking. And they even used ScoMo from his press conference today. And they used one part about how he said, oh, we're going to take a careful measured approach to open up. It's like, well, did you want to add that he had to walk back the statements of our premier? And this is technically not true, what you just posted. Reuters, one of the top news sites in the freaking world, honestly. I don't understand how you have 24 million followers and almost zero interaction, honestly. 68 likes for 24 million followers. Come on, man. Prime Minister previously signaled that it was his preference to ensure all Australians wanted to come home for Christmas, because we've got a big issue that they don't have another Christmas period where people are still overseas and they can't get back home. Yes, and the government was surprised by the speed of the bombshell announcement at 10 a.m. on Friday. The Premier apparently did alert Morrison government to the looming announcement. However, federal government sources noted New South Wales don't choose how we open up the borders and to whom. Exactly. Because it's the Commonwealth that controls tourism, visas, and decides who comes to Australia. Because it's not like Perrottet can be like, yeah, here's a visa. That's not your job. That's through the Commonwealth. It is a big change we've had from Gladys to now. It is a big change we've had because Gladys was like every single morning, 11 o'clock, we're going to have the press conference about how many numbers and all this and when we're going to open up, what's the vax rate. And this guy's like, yeah, no more press conferences. Basically, we're not going to have the chief health officer hanging around. She can get to the back and we're going to open up. I mean, they already technically said once we hit 70%, we're going to start opening anyway. And he came in just about that time the 70% rate hit. So it was kind of a crossover. There was also a hashtag trending called Let It Rip Dominic Perrottet. So a lot of people are thinking, well, let it rip. Our premier just wants to let it rip, let everyone in, let everyone run around and be free again. Only if you are technically double vaccinated. I'm not saying fully because we know booster shots are going to come in, and then technically once you're double vaccinated, you're not going to be fully vaccinated because you're going to need another booster and then another booster and so on and so on. You know how it goes.